Can we have somebody close the doors in the back, just so that we... In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. So as I mentioned at the end of the Divine Liturgy, this Tuesday is the 3rd year anniversary for the departure of Tant Samira Doherty. And for many of you who have been at St. Paul's for the last 4 or 5 years, know that Tant Samira was one of the early members when we first started at this location at St. Paul's. And many of us who got to know Tant Samira and lived with her during those days were greatly impacted by her life, by her spirituality, and by the very fact that for her, in the last couple of years of her life, there was no separation between heaven and earth. That's really the best way to say it, is that in the last 2 years of her life, the barrier that we sometimes feel between heaven and earth was removed. And because of this, her eyes were open to see and to experience many things with the angels, with the saints. And some of that was kind of an opportunity for some of us to kind of witness how that was flowing over into our own lives. And so we're going to spend some time together today, and I know we don't have a lot of time, but we will do the best that we can in the limited time that we have to offer some remembrances of Tant Samira through those who knew her very closely. And so Dr. Mariana Maximous will lead us today, because she was one of those people who knew her for many, many years and experienced many wonderful times with her. And so she'll kind of help lead the conversation. And then if any of you, of course, have some memories that you'd like to share, we'll have an opportunity to do that as well.
Hi, everybody. I cannot believe it's been 3 years already. 3 years since she went to heaven, and 2 years since we talked about her. So this is going to be my part 2. But before we talk about certain stories and stuff about her, I'm not sure if everybody knows her, everybody knows who she was. In case you don't, just a summary in 2 sentences. She came here in late 60s, and she was in her late 20s, and she stayed here for over 50 years, so she lived most of her life here. And she lived in Laguna Niguel in a very beautiful apartment, and her house was turned into a little, convent. Her apartment, this is her room actually in my desktop, and different people would go visit her and talk to her about their problems, and she, sometimes, we would ask to be excused to just spend some time in her room, and even if she is sitting in the dining room, but you just sit there by yourself and you just get so much peace in this room. You can feel like the presence of God and the saints. So I really long for those days. I miss them, but we always, of course, we know she's with us. But anyway, she came here in America in late 60s, and she got married to an Irishman who was in the Marine also, and she had 2 kids, 2 wonderful individuals that we know and we're still in contact. And she has a boy and a girl, and she suffered a lot of sicknesses throughout her life, especially the past 10, 15 years, until she went to heaven, October 23rd, 2015. So let me tell you a little bit about Tant Samira's friendship to the saints. It was amazing. She had very close relationship with the saints, and in the beginning, I thought it was all Baba Kyrillos, and she knew him during his life when he was still in Egypt as a pope. She used to always be there with him and pass by the cathedral and talk to him. He did a lot of miracles, and we covered it in the first talk. But in fact, she actually had a friendship with them before she even met Baba Kyrillos when she was in her 20s. When she was 15, she said a very beautiful story, and most of you might know it, but some of you won't. So she was 15 years old, and she was leaving her high school, and she decided to go to her aunt, to visit her aunt. Her aunt lived in a place called Matareya, and this is not a very easy neighborhood. I myself saw it when I was little. It's a tough neighborhood, and it has a part where you have kind of like an access to the military base or something like that. So there's a lot of military soldiers in a specific area where she had to pass by. So she called her mom. She said, I'm going to go to my aunt. And her mom said, it's going to get dark. You should not. And she said, no, I'll be fine. So she started walking towards her, and it's starting to get a little bit dark. But what scared her is when she passed by that military base section, the soldiers there, the young soldiers there, they started flirting with her. They started harassing her. You know how they do that a lot in Egypt and other countries. But they started like saying names and come here and blah, blah, blah. And she started getting really scared. She was by herself. So she had very long hair, and she said they started like pulling me from my hair, and she was really scared. So she said I was holding my books against my chest and walking, and all I could think of saying, St. George, help me. St. George, come right now, rescue me. And she said, right when I said that, I saw a white horse coming very fast towards me. And the horse started, with the horse, whoever's sitting on the horse, he started pushing each military soldier away from her, and they look at him and they saw like a sergeant, a higher rank. So they kept saying, yes sir, and they were all telling each other, oh, the sergeant is here, you know. They were very scared. She said, I look up and I saw lights. I couldn't tell who it was, but they could look up and they see a regular high-ranked person in the military. So they were really scared. As she was pushing each one away, the horse was pushing away each one, they all parted away. Then he continued walking with her in circles around her. Like he's circling around her as she's walking until she reached her aunt's house. And she knocked on the door, and her aunt said, what are you doing this time? You know, it's kind of dark, it's dangerous to walk by yourself. And she said, I wasn't by myself, I had St. George. And she turned around and he just disappeared at that second. So I thought it was really cool that she had this relationship with the saints since she was young. It's not something that, came later on. And also, I found like a recording of her. I had like an hour of recording of her that I just heard it for the first time, the past like month, preparing for this talk. And she mentioned the story when she was back in Egypt. She said Pope Kyrillos used to weep a lot when he was praying the liturgy. So one time she was in that liturgy, and she could tell he's sobbing and weeping, and he had the handkerchief. He pulled it out of his pocket and he kept wiping his tears. And inside her, during that liturgy, she said, I wish I could that very precious handkerchief that's full of the tears, the prayer with tears of Pope Kyrillos. But she didn't say anything. So after the liturgy, she approached him, and before she even said anything, he took it out of his pocket and he gave it to her, and he said, here you go, Habibi Tabuki, here you go. And she didn't even say a thing. So this handkerchief kind of disappeared. She moved here to America, and over the years, and she stayed here for so many, and she moved a lot. Tant Samira moved a lot from states, from cities to cities and houses to houses. So in the move, she lost it. And so she started wondering where she put it. She started saying, she told me it could have been in the garage, maybe you got lost anyway. But anyway, one day, she was concerned. She wanted to find it. So one day, she said, I was in my room, and my daughter was in her room, and all of a sudden we heard a lot of like noise and things shaking, and something's happening in the living room. So she called her daughter, and she's like, Doreen, is that you? And she said, Mom, is that you? So they went in the living room, and there was a drawer. One of, I think it had the TV or something on it. The drawer was kind of jammed, and I guess it took, I don't know who, but it probably Samira or Baba Cruz, I don't know. But they unjammed it and they pulled it out. So she went out in the living room, she saw it open, wide open. And she saw the mandil in it, and the handkerchief, and she found other things that she was looking for, like the cover over St. George's body that she got from them in Egypt. And actually I guess the gate guard of the church gave it to her. That was covering the body of St. George. kind of kosa, yani, like, you know, because they're not going to give it to anybody, but I think Baba Kyrillos sent it to her or something, according to her in the recording. So she also, and I'm sure Abouna mentioned that a lot, Tant Samira always saw angels in the church. And it was getting more and more as she approached the end of her life. Like the past 2 years of her life we were all amazed at what she's seeing and what she's knowing. And so because she was so close to the saints and she was so close to Baba Kyrillos, she started to have the same talents and spirits. It was interesting. But at church, she would see angels all the time. She always came very early and always saw 2 little angels on the altar, you know, on each side. And on top of the paten where the body is, she always saw a ball of fire covering the body. And during the whole prayer, she would see it until the very end of the liturgy when Abouna dismisses the angel of the sacrifice. As he says, "O angel of sacrifice flying up to the highest, remember us," and she would see that ball of fire going up, you know, up in the ceiling, and then it disappears. And one time I was sitting next to her and she kind of like chuckled. I was like, "What's going on?" She said, it was during the liturgy. She said that the deacon that was serving on that side of the altar, he moved the book, and he just did that, and the angel moved his feet. Like she sees, like she it's not like a picture, you know. She sees angels moving and everything, you know. But it was cute, and she thought it was cute too. Also during the liturgy, she saw many saints, and sometimes she saw saints that she was not familiar with, and she would ask Abouna, and we were trying to figure it out. One time she saw St. Thomas the Hermit, and I remember he had something red. He was wearing something red, and she tried to explain, you know, what she saw, you know, as if we're going to tell her who it was, right? As if we saw that. But later on, Baba a lot of times would tell her that his name is so and so. And actually, the time when she was telling me that story, we were in the waiting area in the hospital when her son had what was it, West Nile virus? Yeah. He was in a very critical condition, and we were outside sitting with her, and she told us about the vision. She told us about the scene she saw in the altar, and she explained it. I can't remember if it was a vision or it was something she saw at church, but she described him to us, and she said, can't remember who he is. And then she looked up, and you can tell like somebody's talking to her, you know. And then she said, "It's St. Thomas the Hermit." And she said, she kept repeating it as if someone is telling her who he is. So at that moment, she told us, "Amba tumas seshs." She kept saying that. So sometimes she didn't know who they are, and sometimes she did, and Baba helped her. Baba Kyrillos helped her. Of course, she saw St. Mina, and she saw lots of other saints every liturgy. So she was visited a lot, of course, by Baba Kyrillos, and one of the stories also was about the coffee pot, the one that they call it the kanaka. It's like a top of the stove coffee pot, the old way to make the Turkish coffee. So before she left Egypt, she wanted to keep some things from him, things that belonged to Baba Kyrillos as a blessing, to take it with her to America. So she wanted to keep that specific one. So Baba Kyrillos gave it to her, and she brought it here in America, and also, again, it kind of got lost. So she was talking to Abouna, and she remembered it. She remembered that I had a coffee pot from Baba, and I brought it, and I can't find it. So later on that night, in the middle of the night, Baba Kyrillos came to her with a white bag that has a picture of St. Mina on it. It looks like you get it from the monastery or something like that, like if you go to the bookstore. And it has that kanaka inside it. And he told her, "Here it is, I found it for you. Enjoy your coffee with Abouna." So when she woke up, and Abouna was saying that it was drenched with oil, and the kanaka was drenched with oil, and I saw the oil even sticking on it. And you'll see that in the slideshow too. A lot of things I'm saying you might see in the slideshow. So after one of the liturgies, he went to her house, and they enjoyed coffee together. And when the coffee was being made, the whole house smelled like, it didn't smell like coffee anymore. It smelled like the fragrance. It's like hanoot fragrance. I don't know how it tasted. Did it taste like hanoot? It did? Was that good? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
The coffee tasted like it had this beautifully sweet, like flavor added to it that tastes like what you smell in the relics of the saints. But it was so good that you didn't feel like you were drinking, something, like cologne or perfume. It made the coffee, taste like a beautiful coffee that you've never had in your life. And that lasted for the whole bag. Was she would say Baba came and he blessed it, like he touched it, so that we would enjoy it.
So it's a flavor you won't find in Starbucks. And the bukhur, the incense filled the house. I was telling Abouna, why can't you just keep adding to the same cup?
Some of these I put on Facebook, but the first time we actually used the kanaka was after a liturgy on Wednesday morning. And I took her home after the liturgy, and she was so excited because it was going to be the first time that we were going to use Baba's kanaka for her and I to have coffee together. So I went to the restroom just to wash up after the liturgy, and then I came out of the restroom. I was in there maybe 30 seconds maximum. I came out of the restroom and I was hit with an overwhelming scent of frankincense, like the bukhur that we use in the church. The whole apartment was filled with frankincense. I couldn't see this, like it wasn't smoke, but the smell. So her bedroom is immediately to the left of the bathroom. So I thought for sure something's happening in her room. There are saints or angels in her room, and I was scared because I knew she was in the kitchen. So I kind of started like peeking in the room. I didn't know what, I looked in the room, of course, I saw nothing. And so I started yelling, Tant Samira, Tant, bukhur, Tant, bukhur. She's not responding to me. So I'm like shaking because it's overwhelming. And then I see her in the kitchen over the stove holding the kanaka, and she's laughing and having a conversation with somebody. She's like, and I'm looking over and I'm saying, what's going on? So I said, Tant, do you smell the bukhur? So she looked over at me like this, and she said, Baba barik al-ahwa. Pope Kyrillos blessed the coffee. He's happy. He's happy that we're enjoying it. He's happy. He's blessing it. He's blessing it. So she was laughing because she was having a conversation with him, and so about 5 times after that we made the coffee with the kanaka, the same thing would happen. The smell of incense in the room and the taste of the coffee itself was so.
Well, Baba Kyrillos loved coffee too, by the way. He has a picture with the coffee, with his coffee cup. So like I said, towards the end of her life, she was starting to be really amazing in how she had a lot of similar gifts that Baba had. And I'll tell you a personal story that happened to me. One time I was having such a rough day, and I dropped off my son to school, and I was frustrated. So my driving was frustrated too. So I came out of his school and I went to the toll road. I took the freeway, the toll road. And I was driving. In the beginning, I was starting to be like, I noticed my driving was, I'm going fast because I was frustrated. And I said, you know what? I need to slow down. This is not right. I need to slow down. It's all good. And I just put my cruise control on 65. And I never drive on 65. But I said, you know what? That's it. I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm not going to even, hit the brake to change the cruise. This is it. I forced myself, So I went, and then as I passed the scanner thing that scans the transponder, I saw a police there, a cop there. And I said, I don't care. It's the first time in my life I go actually on the right speed. I was so excited that there's a police there and I was going the right speed, right? Then as I go, he's right behind me flashing. The lights are on. So I said, okay, I didn't do anything. So I wasn't sure if it was me or not. I kept going, and he is following me with the lights all on. So I started panicking, and all I remember is I kept saying, Tant Samira, ya Baba Kyrillos, I didn't do anything. For the first time, I didn't do anything. Why? So I parked, and I rolled down the window, and he came in, and he said, do you know why I stopped you? I said, no. Why did you stop me? He said, well, because your transponder did not flash when you went through, and you don't have a license plate in the front of your car. I said, my car doesn't have room for a front, license plate. He said, no, you can take it to a body shop and they can break something and put it in. I was like, I have a transponder, it works. We've been going through this freeway for years and years, and I have an account with you guys. So he saw the transponder, and he said, oh, you might have to get a new one, And he said, where's your license plate? I said, inside me. I knew it's in the garage. I said, I didn't want to tell him it's inside the garage. He's like, why don't you check in your glove compartment? So I know it's not there. So I open and it's there. I was shocked. So I took it out and I said, yeah, here it is. I keep it with me all the time, you know? So are you going to give me a fix-it ticket or what's going on here? He's like, I'm not going to give you anything because you have it. I said, okay, thank you. So I left. And I kept saying, why would he stop me? You know, I was frustrated. So anyway, after I finished work and went home, I called Tant Samira as usual. I always called her in the morning and the afternoon. I said, Tant, you won't believe what happened to me. She's like, what? I said, so in the morning, she's like, yeah, Baba told me you were driving very bad around the angels, you know, the school, when I went to the school. I said, yeah. And then I went to the freeway and I said, Tant, why don't you finish the story for me? She said, the police pulled you over. It was entertaining. I wanted to know what, she told me the whole story. I said, yeah, but I didn't do anything. She said, Baba came and told me he stopped her. She was not having a good day. But the police stopped her and he shouldn't have stopped her. He didn't give her a paper. She meant the ticket. He didn't give her a paper. But so she told me Baba Kyrillos was there when I called on him, and he was next to the guy with his cross, hit him, and said, why did you stop her? She didn't do anything. Why did you stop her? And I promise you, I didn't say a word to her. It was all coming out of her when I came home. You know, in the beginning, I used to be like, what? But towards the end of her life, nothing surprised me. Like, nothing. I knew. Like, sometimes I would tell her, you tell me what happened, and she tells me, you know. So it was an amazing experience. What I want to focus on is her virtue of endurance of sickness. So as long as we can, most of us remember her, she's been in and out of the hospital for so many years. Like, I don't know, I want to say 10, 15 years, something like that. She had a lot of severe health problems. She had heart disease that really advanced to a very bad congestive heart failure. She was pretty much living with like 10% of her heart working. She has very bad psoriasis. It's a skin disease where your skin peels off and it's painful. It's really embarrassing too sometimes. She had diabetes that was a problem because we couldn't treat her with a lot of things because of her diabetes. And she finally had a type of bone marrow cancer that finally, you know, caused her to pass. She had no energy, especially with the cancer. She had no energy whatsoever. Her bone marrow was not making enough, you know, cells to keep her going, and she needed blood transfusions every 2 weeks. So towards every 2 weeks, she'll have the worst headaches. She's really struggling until she starts getting her blood transfusions to get her energy back. Before she got diagnosed, Baba came to her and he told her that you're going to be getting a lot of crowns. And she kept telling him, does that mean I'm going to struggle? Does that mean I'm going to suffer? And he did not answer. He would always look up and point out, up telling her, like basically telling her that he'll be with her, God will be with her. So towards the end, when she was really doing very horribly, like health-wise, he came to her and she told him, don't leave me, Baba, stay with me, because she was struggling with so much pain. And he told her, don't worry, even if I'm not with you all the time, you will have your angel with you. So she started seeing her angel all the time with her. It was like her guardian angel. But sometimes she would see him as a little bird sitting next to her in bed, sometimes on her shoulder. And sometimes she said in few incidents, it would turn into a full size of angel in front of her. It depends on the situation. I'm not sure what would trigger that. But one time I was sitting her next to her and she was struggling, and I said, Tant, do you see your angel? And she said, yeah, he's right here. And she pointed on him, and he was like right by her shoulder when she was laying down. And one day she was really struggling so much with all the health issues, and Baba told her, remember the story of Job? Remember how much Job endured? And she said, so ana zay Ayub? I'm like Job? And he told her, well, not quite, but just remember how much he endured. So she said that night I slept and I had a vision of Job. I saw Job sitting there with the boils when he had the skin disease. He was itching and itching and itching, and I could see that. She said it looked like a movie in front of me, something in front of me, but I saw him struggling. And that was a reminder of her, you know, how much he endured. And there was a nice story too that Abouna sent me that she shared with him. She used to get very bad cases of psoriasis all over her body, especially when she goes to the hospital with the stress that her body goes through. It would flare out big time. And what really bothered her is when it gets to her face, she gets so scared that it would get to her face and the hair falls out, and too much embarrassing, picture for her to go to church. So one day, she had a vision, or it was a dream of. It was a vision. So she had a vision that she was sitting on the street with Baba Kyrillos, just in the street, and then he started leaving her. And she said, I was sad that he was leaving, but I saw another person approaching me. He came and he sat next to me, and he told her that I too, on earth, I had a lot of skin problems, and I had a lot of scars and a lot of wounds. Even the dogs used to come and lick my wounds. Can you remember who? Can you guess? Lazarus. You know the story of Jesus when he said there was a rich man and a poor man, Lazarus and the rich man? You know that story? That we think it's parable, but I guess I never knew that this was actually a real person. But he told her, I used to struggle a lot with so much painful wounds and stuff, and then I promise you now I'm in heaven with my body with no wounds. I promise you when you go to heaven, you're not going to have any of that anymore. So that was a very interesting thing that she shared. But if you think about it, when somebody with her energy, if you met her, you know what I'm talking about. She was like, sometimes she would run to talk to you, and she can't barely breathe. She's a very active person, and she wants to do this, she wants to serve, she wants to do everything. But to be bedridden for a long time, this can be very depressing and very devastating for somebody with this personality. So I always saw that amazing, how she kept her peace, When most of us, or I'll speak for myself, when we are struggling with something difficult, if we can't endure, you're going to see that manifested in our behavior in different ways. And these are the ones that I'm going to tackle and show you how she actually dealt with it. Like the first thing we always do is complain. Why me? Why did it happen to me? Out of everybody. Why did God forsake me? Why did this and that? And Tant Samira, totally the opposite. She was always giving thanks. She always said, Ashkurak ya Rab. Like I would tell her, Tant, what did the doctor say today? She'll say this, and then we had to do this, and we had to go and have a surgery and change my pacemaker battery. But Ashkurak ya Rab. Thank God for everything. She never ever complained and said, why me? So she gave thanks. That was one of the things that were amazing that we saw, and it really showed us that she is enduring it. She's accepting it. And also, the other amazing thing is her desire to serve people in the middle of all that. One time I visited her in the hospital. I think she was in San Marina, and we had to call the 911 for her, and she went to the hospital. The lab person came to draw blood, and she always had a problem. They couldn't find her vein. That was always an issue, and she was in always so much pain, and you see her like, try to poke here. So she always says, not this. I hate people when they're putting needles in my arms. So at that time, I said, it's okay, Tant. So I went next to her on her seat. So I really witnessed it. The lab person came, and he said, don't worry, Samira, and he started talking to her. He's talking to her, and she went in totally different world. She started looking up and smiling and nodding, and she's talking to somebody, and her arm, and the person put the needle in there. She didn't even flinch or nothing. It's like she had no idea what was happening. And then after that, they were done, and she said, you're done? He's like, yeah, I'm done. You did really good. So I said, Tant, was Baba here? She's like, yeah. He said, don't worry, and he held my hand. So in front of me. Then a few minutes later, a nurse came in to check on her. And Tant Samira took her agbaya out, and the agbaya had a lot of pictures of Baba Kyrillos with his life in the back in English. So she told the nurse, come dear, come. Do you pray? I was like, oh gosh, Tant Samira, come on. And she said, I try, And she said, no, you have to pray. But Jesus loves you, and God loves you so much, and Baba loves you. She's like, Baba? And then I'm like, Tant, she doesn't even know who he. But then she said, come, I'll give you something. I have something specially for you. So she took a picture and she gave it to her. She said, ask for his prayers. He loves you. Now I'm thinking maybe there was an issue with the person she was praying about it. I don't know. But she gave the picture to her, and she kept telling her, you have to pray and go to church. You have to pray. So I was sitting there amazed at how much she has such courage and bravery. I mean, I'm not going to walk to somebody I don't know and say, do you pray? You have to, she has such a courage and enthusiasm to talk about her saint. And the other thing is, in the middle of her worries and pains, she cares about the salvation of the nurse. I mean, we're in the middle of all the chaos and we're worried about her, and she's still looking for souls to save, So I remember one time, actually I got that from the recording. She was talking to me on the phone, and I decided to record it. She was about to go in a surgery. They're gonna change the battery of her pacemaker, but she was so weak that we were very worried about, even if it's a small surgery that can take her life. So she was talking to me that day, and she said, "Yeah, it's a surgery, and the doctor said they're gonna take me in this and they." And then she says, "But I was asking God, how can I serve you? What can I do to serve you?" I mean, in the middle of talking about her surgery, she's thinking, how can she serve God? Maybe I can go to church and serve with the little kids. Maybe I can fill the cups of communion and clean up a little bit. I don't know what I can do. I said, "Tant, you're serving a lot. It doesn't have to be a physical service, but you're serving a lot." She said, "Yeah, I just called this person and that person, and then I called this other person." And so she was serving people nonstop. She was always on her phone. I mean, she could barely breathe sometimes. She had oxygen all the time in her nose, like the tube already hooked. But she always served. She called everybody with all kinds of problems you can imagine. She called the sick to check on them. She called the lonely to be their mom and their best friend. She talked to the depressed to cheer them up with her cheerfulness. She talked to the weary to tell them, Lazarus عندك ويسوع معك. That was her language. So she always served to the 100% of her ability, because if you think about it, somebody who can barely breathe, bedridden, going back and forth, struggling from all these diseases, her biggest thing that she can do is a phone call. So she did it to the end, to the no limit. Even her daughter said, "You're gonna die. You cannot breathe. You're exerting yourself." But she did not stop it. So, and even like the doctors gave her 2 weeks to live. And the last week of her life, she sat with me and Ihab, and she told us a lot of advices to do with our kids, and to tell them how you lead your family, you do this, you're a good man, you should do this and that. And she could barely breathe, but she's sitting there giving all the energy to us, to her kids. So I saw that one of the biggest signs of someone enduring what they're going through is they were able to focus on other people in the middle of what they're going through. Because if she can't endure her own problems, she's not going to go endure other people's problems. I think that's what I see. I don't know. If she was overwhelmed with what she was going through, there is not going to be any much left for others. But she was all about other people. The other point is she never belittled our problems. So sometimes it was embarrassing to go to her and say, "Tant, I have a very tough meeting at work." Well, tough meeting at work, the woman's dying, Like our problems were so little compared to what she's going through, but she never ever made us feel that, what is that silliness, look what I'm going through. She always actually worried about it, like not worried, but like she carried the load with us. She would call, follow up, how did he do? How did you do? How was this? How was that? And they're very small, simple things compared to what she was going through. So she had genuine sympathy and care for us, even though it was not at all a big deal compared to her struggles. Her house was always opened. A lot of times I would be on the phone with her and she would say, "I gotta go now because I have somebody coming. They have a problem that I need to serve with abouna and help them." She had people coming, with marriage struggles. She saved many marriages. She was like another counselor. She was a spiritual mother for them. She had a lot of people who had problem with the faith, and she would come and they just see her faith, and that would teach them and would change their life. So she was opening her house in the middle of how weak she was, even towards the very end, for other people to come and approach her, and that she serves them. The other thing is her constant cheerfulness. If anybody here know her or knew her, I mean, you see Tant Samira and she's always with a big smile on her face. She never grumbled. She was never you never see that face on her depressed or down. She always was very happy and cheerful. She would spread the joy everywhere she goes. I mean, even in the hospitals, she would go to the hospital and we would go there and worry, "Tant, how was it? What did you do?" And she would say, "The doctor was so good looking." I said, "Tant, come on." And she would tell him, "Oh, I'm young." Like she would flirt with him, But of course, go ahead.
The only reason why she would ever allow 911 to be called. She would refuse to go to the hospital, but she liked when the firemen came.
She was shy. Yeah, she was so cute, and the nurses loved her, the doctors loved her. She was the easiest patient on the floor, you know. She's always cheerful and praying for them, and God bless you, and flirting with the doctors, and you know. So she was very joyful and smiling in the middle of the worst time. And it's funny, I noticed that her apartment. You would remember that, abouna. As you go in her apartment, you walk in a hall where her window's here, so you see her. But I remember her hall was all full of green plants, green plants everywhere, and her balcony was all green plants. So I feel like even she spread life everywhere. And during the last 2 weeks of her life, by the end, like when she passed away, all of them withered, like all of them dried up and withered. And it was something I noticed. You noticed the plants? But I don't know. Anyway, the other thing is her continuous life of prayers. So another thing that we would, like I would do I see myself doing, is I'm not going to be as smiley as she is, but I hope I will learn from her. But also prayers. Some people get upset at God and mad at him and rebellious, and they don't want to pray anymore. But she did not stop praying. This was her spot right there behind where abouna is. She always stood on her feet the whole liturgy from beginning to end, raised his hand up, her eyes were shut, and struggling, fighting with God, with her usharb covering her hands too. And it was an amazing view. Like some people, that's what got stuck in their head. It's her view, this old woman with her oxygen tank linked to her, giving her oxygen, and she's standing there struggling. Sometimes it was exerting for her. And a few times she went to the hospital because of the exertion that she's giving during the liturgy. So her continuous life of prayer was amazing. And one time I went to visit her. I'm going to tell you that story really quick because you're going to see a little video of it in the slideshow. I went to her and she had such a very bad headache. She couldn't open her eyes. And she said, she was so sad, not for anything, but because she didn't have strong eyes anymore or without the headache, that she can read her Bible. So I said, okay, let me read the Bible for you. So as I was reading the Bible with her, she's starting, first of all, she was listening to it like, you know, like the deer pants for the water, like the psalm says. It's like food for her when she hears the Bible. And then all of a sudden she started laughing and smiling, and she's reaching out. She's reaching to something. So I'm reading the Bible and I see this and I said, maybe I should stop and videotape. I don't know what to do. Like I'm overwhelmed. Something is going on. So I started videotaping while I'm reading. I kept reading, but she kept reaching out for something. And after that, I finished reading and she woke up and as if nothing happened. I said, Tant, what happened? She said, Baba came and he kept putting his hand on my head for the headache to go. And I was trying to hold his hand and kiss it. So you'll see a little clip of her with that, you know, little miracle. So the one thing that made her sad and cry because of her sickness is because it gets in the way of going to church. Not because she wants to go have fun, not because she wants to do anything, but it's taken away from her going to church. You know, which is, I blame, you know, myself, who has all the health, and I still don't make it early and come. And so anyway, here she is, the one thing that really made her sad. So because of that, Baba so many times would come to her on Sundays and would take her with the Spirit to the liturgy. So she would hear the sermon, she would know what was happening in the altar. Many times she would leave messages for abouna. He has countless. You can maybe tell them about that. He had a lot of voicemails.
I have like 20 voicemails where I saved many voicemails that she often left me, like right as the liturgy was ending, when she was like in the hospital or when she was sick at home, before we started like live streaming and everything. And she, literally sometimes when I'm just taking my tunya off, you know, she would leave me a message telling me about things that happened in the liturgy. Saints or angels that she saw in the church, even sometimes things that were said between me and the deacon during the liturgy, and she wasn't here, you know. So she had the gift where this is a gift in the church. We sometimes call it by location or siyaha, where sometimes by spirit people can go to other places. So many times because she loved St. Paul's so much, And she loved to be at church so much that she, even when she was sick, she always was able to find a way to be here with us and tell us sometimes what people were wearing. Sometimes she would tell me, be careful, this person was trying to tell you something and you did this. And so her eyes were opened to many things even when she wasn't here.
One time the ambulance took her from church, and I ran with her, and I was very worried about her. So they gave her a bunch of medications that made her very drowsy. So she was pretty much unconscious at that time. She was sleeping or something. But what I cannot forget is I was standing outside her door, and I could hear Tant Samira whispering, "Lord have mercy, Lord," like that under her breath. Ya Rab Arham, Ya Rab, like trying to sing it like that. And it was just amazing because they're talking to her and she's not responding. But you can tell her subconscious even was filled with Christ's love and praising. So I will never forget that. The other thing that she really endured a lot, and before I move to that, Tamav Irini, most of you probably know her. Tamav Irini, when she was here, she passed away a few years ago, and she's an amazing saint. She wanted to be martyred, and God told her, or Wusifin told her, that's not going to be her. She's not going to be martyred, but her martyrdom will be her diseases and sicknesses. So she was very, very sick, like Tant Samira. So Tamav Irini came to Tant Samira in her room and spent a long time with her, talking to her about what she went through in her life and to help her endure and give her, comfort. I thought it was very cute because that's like such a friendship with the saints. And she wasn't even very aware of who Tamav Irini was. She got to actually know her in person, not someone telling her. The last thing I want to talk about very, very quickly was her endurance for others. Okay, so you would think, why would she have to endure others? Why would anybody be mean to her or rude to her, right? Tant Samira was the sweetest person ever. But she still was fought. The devil fought her through other people too. She always said, "I love you" to everybody, and she really meant it, and you really feel it, even if she doesn't know much about you. But still, some people attacked her, some people mistreated her, some people ridiculed her big time because of what she says. In the beginning, she was simple in what she sees, and she would share, but she got really mocked by other people about what she's saying. No, they don't believe what she's saying. Even very close people to her. Even the closest people to her, she couldn't share a lot of stories with them or anything. She would keep her mouth shut. But even if they showed very, very clearly that they don't believe her, she never felt resentment towards them. She still loved them, and nothing changed her love to them or even her feelings. She was looked down by some people. She even told me specific names. And she said, they always mistreat me and they don't look at me like, oh, because they're this and they're that socially or career-wise, and I'm not. And she said, thank God, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an engineer, I'm not any of that, I'm a simple person. But that same person who mistreated her, put her down, one time he was going through issues with his work, and he was, crushed because that's all he's got, right, the status. And the same person, she saw him in the liturgy and she approached him. She said, "What's wrong? I know you lost your job." And he was shocked. And then she started comforting him and following up with him. And that person over time, developed such a respect and admiration to her. So I've seen how much she forgave, how much she had peace. She never held grudges towards anybody. And I think that's why she was so peaceful and joyful. And it shows her humility, her true humility. She didn't see herself as, I'm almost a saint here seeing these things and this person comes and mocks me or something. She was very, very humble. And I heard something cool before about humility. The humble person is indifferent when it comes to, insulting. Like if someone puts them down or insults them, it doesn't matter to them. But they actually get troubled and uncomfortable when they get praised. So she was like that. So I'm going to end by saying that her last hours, the night before she passed away, I was around her with Megid and Ihab and a few of us were there. And during those 2 weeks, they stopped her medications. So her body was going crazy. She was in so much pain. She was very irritated. Her body was irritated and she would be shaking, like her body's giving in basically. And we felt so bad she couldn't relax, she couldn't sleep, she wasn't very aware at that point. So I held her hand, and Magid and Ihab was there, and a few people. We started doing tamgid for Baba Kyrillos. And I'm not kidding you, 1 minute later, she fell asleep like a baby when her mother prays for her or sings to her. And it's amazing how the tamgid of Baba Kyrillos still, until the last breath, is what calmed her down. And her departure was not easy for a lot of people, especially when you were close to the people, to her. But a few days after she went to heaven, she came to one of her daughters, one of her young women who were very close to her, and she was pregnant. So she told her, Habibi, your doctor is going to call you tomorrow. That's after Tant Samira going to heaven. It was 3 days. The doctor will call you tomorrow, will tell you that you have pregnancy diabetes, but don't worry, you'll be fine. And also, a week from now, abouna is going to be troubled by something, and remind him not to be troubled. You want to add something? Do you want to add something? Okay. So the following day, she got a phone call from her doctor who said exact same thing. You have pregnancy diabetes, and we need to do this and that. But she wasn't scared because she already got the assurance that she'll be with her and she'll pray for her. Then a week later, the same thing as she said, abouna encountered something, and she called him and she reminded him that Tant Samira said, don't be troubled, because she's with them and she's praying with them. In her funeral, and that was witnessed by a lot of people, in her funeral, as they brought her white coffin inside the church, we smelled a fragrance coming out like as the coffin was going. It was a very weird, something I've never smelled before, a mixture of hanoot and flowers. It's something that's not in the church. It's not the incense, it's not pure hanoot, it's not the candle scent. It was something definitely coming out like as a woof, like with the wind, like a breeze. And I smelled it, and a few people did, but nobody said anything. We came outside, we were talking to abouna, and then one of us said, did you guys smell something like right when the coffin went in? I said, yes, I did. And then a few people, yes, we did. We all did, So we knew that she was with us that day, and she blessed us, and her pure fragrance was a reflection of her pure life. So I have a slideshow. Do you guys mind if I play it? I played for you, and a few things I mentioned, you'll find it in it. You guys noticed a few things we talked about? Okay. Abouna?
I think, for the sake of anybody who wants to leave, please feel free to leave. I know we took a long time, but I know there might be some people that want to share some individual stories. So if anybody would like to stay and listen to some of the stories, we can, but feel free to get up and leave at any time. And of course, we saw many miraculous things with Tant Samira, and many external signs that were manifested sometimes when she saw Pope Kyrillos, we would smell the fragrance or we'd see the oil. But like Mariana was saying, that one of the really amazing qualities of Tant Samira was when she was so sick and she couldn't, and she, if any one of us was in her place, it would be very difficult to be thinking about other people, And, one of the things that I remembered, and I completely forgot about this until Mariana was talking about it, was, we spoke so regularly that sometimes I would, she would sense if something was bothering me or something. So one time I mentioned to her, I'm like, Tant, pray for me, I'm bothered by something. I didn't tell her any details, and it actually was not even a big deal. But because we had such a familiar relationship, I would tell her, something like that. And the next morning, she spoke to me, and how are you now? How is everything? I'm like, I'm fine. Everything's okay. Like, what? And she said, I didn't sleep the whole night. I was fighting with God the whole night. And then Baba came to me, and I told him, no, I don't want to see you. Go to abouna Kyrillos. I don't want you to come to me. Go to abouna Kyrillos. He needs you. And she was like praying the whole night for me because I simply said, pray for me, something's bothering me. And she was sick, and she was, suffering. But that's how much she loved people. And that's one of the things that, I'll tell you, for the women who are going to the convent, there's a beautiful story that happened with one of the nuns there. She actually she attended here St. Paul's. Irene, who became Sister Anastasia now, her name is Omina Dulagi, Mother Dulagi. So she had asked me, Irene at the time asked me to take her to go visit Tant Samira. So the two of us went to go visit Tant Samira, and she wanted to ask Tant Samira to pray for her about the calling to monastic life, because she was still struggling with the decision. So we went, and Tant Samira was so excited because she loved monastic life. She always wanted to be a nun. Before she left Egypt, she actually asked Fr Kyrillos to let her stay in Egypt while all her family immigrated, so that she could stay and be a monk. And he told her, no, this is not your calling. You go with your family to America, and there you're going to meet somebody from there, and you're going to get married there. And he told her so many things that was going to happen in her life. But since then, she always loved the monastic life. So at one point, Tant Samira and Irene were sitting and talking, and then, like Mariana was saying, when Tant Samira disengaged from the person in front of them, and you can tell she went into a different realm, a different mode of communication with somebody that was present. So she was looking up, and she was, smiling and stuff like that. And then she looked at Irene, and she had this huge smile on her face, and she just kept nodding and saying, "Yes, I see you. You're wearing the veil. You are a nun. You are going to be a nun." And she saw her completely dressed in the monastic, veil and garb and so on. And it was a very impactful interaction between the two of them. And actually, she was just consecrated as a nun just some months ago. So it's been some years, but she, spent 3 years as a novice, and then recently was consecrated a nun. So I know, Megid, you want to say something? Come. And my mom has something, and I think that Nabila has something. No? When she used to enter into the church? Yeah. My mom's talking about when she would go into the church without the... Many times Tant Samira she'd want to be the first person in the church at St. Marina's, and the doors would all be locked, and the first people that would come to the church would find her sitting in the church. So, yeah.
I don't know what to say. I want to surprise me. Tant Samira, she taught me a lot of things. She taught me simplicity. She taught me love, forgiveness. She forgive, like Marianne said, anybody talk bad about her or anything, she will forgive. And she doesn't remember. The one thing about Tant Samira too, it's like whenever I have a bad day, as soon as I'm troubled, I will get a phone call from her. Habibi, Malak, what's wrong with you? I told her, how did you know? She said, I can see you putting your hand like this. I'm like, yeah, pray for me. She told me, just forget about it. Everything will be good. And that's it. Just as soon as she called me, everything is like bright. And the other thing about Tant Samira, she's like, when she used to come to St. Marina, she loved going to the liturgy early, like before anybody. And that's what we should all do. She's like, and when I go to the church, the doors are locked, and she's inside. Like, how did you get inside? Oh, Baba فتح لي. Doors are locked, and nobody's there but her. And the church is dark, and she's sitting in the corner, with her agbeya, and I don't see there's no light, and she's reading, and she's reciting all the psalms, and she's praying. What I learned from her, the prayer life and simplicity, and she's just, I miss her a lot. Like the last 3 years is like, it's just a lot. Yeah, thank you.
She was. Then Nabila, you want to tell the story about the oil? Huh?
When Samira was not feeling well, and
Put the clothes because it's sweet.
Okay. Her daughter asked me to go spend the day with her. I used to see her a lot and talk to each other so many times a day. So her daughter asked me if I can go spend the day with her. Her daughter was working from home most of the time to keep an eye on her, but that day she had to go to work for a meeting. And I knew that the week before, she had problem with her diabetes, and she almost passed out, and they called abouna, and abouna had the maintenance guy open the door, and he helped her. So I was with her, and we were talking fine hours. We were just doing great. All of a sudden, her color changed, and I started to worry about her. She said, take me to my bedroom. So I helped her to go to her bedroom, and then just automatically, she grabbed a box, and that's to measure her diabetes, and she checked her diabetes. And I remember a big number showed on the screen. I was so scared, 400 something, 500 something. I don't know much about diabetes, but the number scared me. And I didn't know what to do. And then she put that box away, and she grabbed another box, and she gave herself a shot in her stomach. And I'm just sitting there, didn't know what to do. And then as soon as she gave herself the shot and put the box back, she fell on the bed. I don't know if she passed out, what happened to her. I was so scared. So I called abouna. I said, abouna, should I call 911? I don't know, she passed out or she's asleep or what, but she's not answering me. As I was talking to abouna, as soon as I started talking to abouna, and I've seen this so many times with Samira, I knew that Baba came from her eyes and the way she's looking up, and she opened her eyes, and she started talking to Baba. So I told him, abouna, don't worry, Baba's here. Baba will take care of her. So Abouna told me, I'm on my way anyway. And then I saw the cross with oil on her forehead. And then she was leaning like sideways on her pillow, and I saw that oil dripping on her pillow. And selfish me, of course, I grabbed our Kleenex, and I wanted to get some of the oil. And I kept smelling it, and I kept anointing myself, and I just was holding to the Kleenex with the oil, and I was just keeping an eye on her. And she kept talking to abouna for a while, to Baba for a while, and she started to feel good. And she opened her eyes, and she was talking like, what's wrong, why are you worried? And then abouna came in, and I just left her with abouna, and I went home. Just one other story I wanted to mention, because it has to do with St. Paul. When God saved Danny, and I remember there were 5 patients at Hawk Hospital with the same virus, with the West Nile virus, and I guess 3 of them passed away, I can't remember. But Danny was in a very bad shape, but she knew since day one that Baba is with him, and Baba comforted her. And we took her to the hospital at least twice, and I never saw her cry or worried. She knew that Danny was going to be okay. So I guess she had a nadr. I don't know what's a nadr.
Oath.
Yeah.
Like a vow or an oath?
She wanted to buy the altar set for St. Paul, the altar cover with all the faith and everything, the whole complete set. She didn't drive, she didn't know where to go or what to do. I didn't know all that. I just happened to be with her one day, and a guy came over and he delivered the package to her coming from Egypt. And she told me, open the package, help me with the package. I opened the package, she was just like a child. She was so happy. And then she told me the story about how she wanted to order that altar set and she didn't know what to do. So she was sitting one day and thinking about what she wants to do. And Baba whispered in her ear a name, a male, I think, or something, a male. And she kept thinking, a male, who's a male? So she went to her old record that she brought with her from Egypt. And she found a telephone notebook, and she kept flipping. And then she found a name, a male, and a number next to the name. And she remembered right away the lady. She was a lady that used to meet her في البطرخانة in Egypt when she used to go attend the liturgy of Pope Kyrillos. So they became friends. So she dialed the number, and she called a male in Egypt. And she told, remember me, and surprisingly, yes, she remembered Samira. And Samira told her, I want to order a set for the altar, and I don't know what to do. You guys in Egypt. And Emel told her, funny, that a few years ago, I opened the factory myself, and I do these sets for the church, for churches, and I do priest clothes and everything. So I can do it for you. And she was so happy. So she told her, I want this. I don't want tantel. I don't want a lace that goes around. I don't like the lace. I want it like scallops, And she described to her how she wants it. She told her, I know exactly what you want, and I'm going to do it the way you want it. And then Samira was opening the set with me and just spreading everything all over the house, and she was so happy because it was exactly how she pictured it and how she wanted it. And we still have the set, but to preserve it, they don't use it all the time. Just we get it out
use
of
it in the feasts.
occasion.
Feasts.
Yeah, so those are a couple of stories, but anyone can write books about stories about Samira.
There's a
She
funny-
did and how she touched our lives.
A funny ending to the first story was after the.
Oh yeah, I forgot that part.
Oh, this was it. Funny ending to that first story was that after the oil had dripped all over the bed sheets and the pillowcases, a couple of days later, she wanted to wash her sheets. So she didn't know what to do. Like, okay, is it okay to wash them? It has like holy oil on it, but I want to wash the sheets. So she looked at the picture above clothes. She's like, I don't know what to do. I want to wash the sheets, but I don't want to do it if it's because of the oil. So she said as soon as she was saying that to him, she saw his hand, nothing else other than his hand, and his hand went over the sheets, and then all of the oil was removed. So when she told me that, I started yelling at her. I said, Tant, I would have taken the sheets from you and gotten you a new set. Why didn't you ask me before? She's like, I didn't know. I was, she had such a reverence for holy things. Anything like a cross, the Bible, the church, she had such a reverence for anything. So she didn't want to wash something that was considered sacred, So, you have a story? No? Can I say it? I can say it? Can I mention that you were in it? This was on maybe the Christmas, a year before she passed. I don't think I wrote this one down, so maybe it might be new for some of you. The week before, Baba Kyrillos told her, you're going to take a special blessing on Christmas at the church. But he wouldn't tell her what. So the whole week she was so excited. She was so excited because she knew that something was waiting for her on Christmas, which was for us January 6th in the evening. So she called me a couple days before and she said, Abouna, what time do you go to the church? So I said, well, I'll go like an hour early before the deacons because, I like to get out the nice set and check everything and prepare the altar and get the vestments ready, so we're not in a rush, She said, oh, please, can I come with you? So I said, of course, Tant, I can pick you up, but it's going to be a long night. I mean, as Mariana mentioned, I mean, with her health, it was very, she had the oxygen. And so I said, I'm going to be here like an hour before we start matins. It's going to be a very long night. She said, no. Even if you come even 3 hours early, I will come with you. She was like a kid, just excited. So we came to the church, and then when we came, I think Rafat was making urban, right? And Marianne was in the church cleaning up a little bit and gathering like some of the stuff from putting them in the backs of the seats and so on. So when Tant Samira first came in, she saw somebody in the church, she got kind of disappointed, not because of you, but because, as like Meg, I think, was saying, like she liked to spend time alone. She'd say like, I want God just to look at me, not look at anybody else. I want God to focus all of his attention on me. And if there's one more person in the church, that means he has to divide his, that was her simple way of just, wanting. So I could see that she was a little bit kind of like, oh, there's somebody in the church. What are they doing here an hour before, So as usual, I said, okay, Tant, like I have to go to the altar, She said, no, it's okay, I'm going to come and pray. What I remember, because of course the altar curtain was closed, but maybe Marianne can add some details, is that I heard Marianne kind of scream like for help, like something was happening. So I opened the curtain and I saw that Tant Samira was like about to fall. Right? Is that all right? And so I came out, what's going on, what's happening, and then I smelled something very beautiful, and you smelled it too. And I think Marianne, because out of reverence, she went straight down and knelt and started praying. And so Tant Samira was kind of, shaken, and I can see the oil, and there's this fragrance that's around her. And then, so I asked, what's going on? What happened? I think she was sat here, right? This was her seat? Yeah. So she said, I came into the church, and I was a little bit disappointed that I saw somebody in the church. And I said, okay, I'll go in my usual spot, and I'll pray. And then she said, as I was praying, I found a young girl, like a young lady, like in front of me. And I didn't know who she was. And then she said she turned around, and immediately she recognized that it was Saint Marina. So I think Saint Marina put her hand on her, and that's when she felt the power, that she almost fell, and that's when Marianne caught her. So, and then when she was telling me the story in her very kind of cute way, she said, and then Saint Marina whispered to me, there was another young girl that was next to her here. And then Saint Marina whispered to me, Saint Verena. Saint Verena. So she took the blessing of Saint Marina and Saint Verena, who had appeared to her on that night. And that was the blessing that Pope Carlos had told her about. But again, of course, what we witnessed was the signs of their presence, the smell, the oil. And this was something that happened very regularly in the church. Who else has a story they want to say? Yeah. Let's keep it close because it's...
Okay. It was... Okay. It was one of those days that it was cold and it was windy, and so I took my car to put gas at Costco. So I opened the door, I put the gas, and then, all of a sudden the wind, I went back to my car, the wind hit the door back, and it came into my eyes, and it was disaster. Okay, I'm gonna eat it. Okay, so anyway, so it hurt really bad. My eyes was red, and then I figured I'm gonna lose my eye, So anyway, I went home and I tried to call Dr. George Salib and tell him that, please take me an appointment. My eyes, I'm gonna lose my eye. So I went home, and then all of a sudden the phone rang before I called George Salib. and it was Tant Samira. And I say, Camelia, how is your eye? How she know? How she knows that my eye is hurt? And I say, how you know Tant Samira? And she said, I know. Baba Kyrillos was here, and I told him, Camelia is crying from her tear, and you have to do something about it. I say, and what did he say? And he said, he's going to take care of it for you. So, and I didn't call George Salim, and I okay, if that's what he said, okay. So, I mean, it was.
So there's several stories that I wrote down and over the years shared them periodically on Facebook. So if you're not on Facebook and you want some of them, you can send me an email or a text message, and I'll send you. A lot of the stories were just that we remembered over the years. We documented them. So anybody have any questions or comments? Daisy said Haga. Okay, let's stand up and pray. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not in temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Through Christ Jesus our Lord. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory. The love of God the Father, the grace of his only begotten Son, our Lord God and Savior Jesus Christ, the communion gift of the Holy Spirit be with you all. Go in peace. The peace of the Lord be with you. Bless you. If any of the kids want more Orban, or the adults too, we have a little bit more. Come.